Part 53. Fantasy, Me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 522. It's too late. The Lord of the Underworld said in a deep voice. The moment we escaped from the Xianguang realm, the Sumeru realm and the Jinhui realm had already emerged from the chaos, and merged with the earthly immortal realm. As soon as this sentence came out, everyone was stunned. How can it be? Someone murmured. In everyone's opinion, the Sumeru realm and the Jinhui realm are their escape route. They did not launch a conquest against them at the beginning, but they just did not take out their hands. When the underworld completely unified the Xianguang realm, the Mi realm and the Jinhui realm could not escape the end of destruction. Unfortunately, the plan could not keep up with the changes. Before they could start to cross the border, they were pulled from the chaos to the vicinity of the earthly immortal realm by the Master Tianji. However, today, the Master Tianji once again dragged them. The way back is completely cut off. Could it be said that Lord Tianji has reached this point long ago? If this is the case, Lord Tianji would be too terrifying. After all, those two worlds are not weaker than Xianguang realm. Pulling it over early, the owner of Tianji must be completely sure before doing this. In this way, the outcome of their underworld has been doomed from the beginning. Behind all of this, is the master of Tianji planning behind the scenes. Someone said softly. There was a hint of weakness in the voice, like an ant, facing the mercy of God, unable to resist at all. Before the other party came forward, the underworld was already gone. If it were the master of Tianji, what kind of situation would it be if they took action in person? Fortunately, these people had not fallen before, and were not controlled by the soul-calling beads. Otherwise, I am afraid they would have been wiped out in one fell swoop. I have underestimated the owner of Tianji. The Lord of the Underworld spoke slowly. He took a long breath and said softly. To this day, he has to face this situation. If he had known that the master of Tianji had such ability, he would have retreated with all his strength from the beginning. Follow the strategy to deal with it. It will never be easily penetrated into the interior, and the entire underworld will be destroyed in one fell swoop. Lord, we are now? A subordinate asked. He looked blankly at the chaotic mist around him, and he was confused. Everything about him and others was calculated by the owner of Tianji. Who can guarantee that his next move will also be controlled by the owner of Tianji? Everyone is like a puppet manipulated by strings, being watched by the owner of Tianji Tower. To be honest, this feeling is not pleasant, as if there is no secret in the whole body. Let's stay here for now. The Lord of the Underworld took a look at the nearby area and said. Is it a blessing or a curse? This place is close to the Xianguang realm. Once any changes occur in the Xianguang realm, they will be able to know immediately, and if the Tianji building master wants to deal with them, he will also being able to quickly get wind of the situation and escape. Let me ask you, except for the owner of Tianji Tower, who would have thought that after they left the Xianguang realm, they did not stay far away, but stayed nearby? And the Lord of the Underworld looked into the void and said again, I feel that after the Sumeru realm and the Jinhui realm merge, the current world may not be so peaceful. At the same time, Tianyuan world. Outside Dawang city, a stream of light flew from a distance and quickly disappeared into the city. This is a man who looks no more than middle-aged. His whole body is filled with divine brilliance. His eyes open and close, scanning every corner of Dawang city. He wants to explore the entire Dawang city, down to the smallest details. This deserted city is indeed extraordinary. The man withdrew his gaze, feeling awestruck in his heart. He just glanced at it casually, and saw countless terrifying formations, densely packed in the void. The weakest among them were the formations of the immortality realm. The strongest, even he couldn't even see the details. It was certain that even a person at the peak of immortality who dared to run wild in the desert city would probably be turned into ashes immediately. The young master's prediction is right. This Tianji building master is unfathomable. He controls everything behind the scenes. Once he makes a mistake, there will be no chance. The man came to the Tianji tower, raised his head and glanced at the plaque, with a thoughtful look in his eyes. The Tianji tower in front of him was clearly right in front of him, but when he scanned it with his spiritual consciousness, it seemed like a ball of air, without any trace. As if it is not in this world, it is extremely strange. If you don't see the scene with your own eyes, it is difficult to imagine that there is a building that can hide from the detection of spiritual consciousness. Don't you belong to this world? The man frowned slightly, and slowly took back the steps he took. In his eyes, this Tianji tower seemed to have turned into an abyss monster that could swallow up the world. No one can guarantee that if he enters it, in the end what will be the end. After all, if someone can produce a more terrifying figure than the immortal realm formation, the strength of the other party must not be underestimated. I am just here to check the news about Tianji Tower, there is no need to put myself in danger. There is something strange in the Tianji Tower, so let's report it to the young master first. The man muttered in his mind. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 523. Messages travel quickly. The man immediately received a reply from his young master. When he saw the content, his face suddenly became a little ugly. The young master actually asked me to enter it personally and investigate. The man's expression was ugly. He glanced at the Tianji Tower, and then at the contents of the jade slips, and fell into a difficult decision for a moment. Entering the Tianji Tower is easy, but God knows how difficult it is to get out. What if he can't get out? Leaving aside the Tianji Tower, even in this deserted city, to be honest, he has no confidence in running out. Once the formation is activated, even an immortal king-level figure comes, and he will probably be destroyed. Not to mention he is an ordinary person in the immortality realm. Well. After a long time, the man let out a long sigh and resolutely stepped into the Tianji Tower with a look of death. The first time he entered, the surrounding scene changed. It was as if he had come to another world. Even his consciousness, they were completely suppressed and could not come out of the body. This change was immediately noticed by the man who had always been vigilant. His expression suddenly changed. In addition to his spiritual consciousness, he also discovered that his cultivation level seemed to be they have all disappeared. This is more terrifying. The mysterious Tianji building master actually unknowingly deprived himself of his cultivation and became an ordinary person. You must know that even the immortal king cannot do this. It's easy to kill someone in the immortal realm, but it's almost impossible to withdraw from cultivation silently. Tianji landlord. So scary. The man's face turned pale all of a sudden. His body was trembling, and he almost fell to the ground. The cultivation he was most proud of in the past. If it all fails at this moment, I guess everyone will feel unsure. Because without cultivation, life and death are all controlled by others. Once the other party is unhappy, I am afraid that the next second, I will embark on the road to hell. Are you looking for me? At this time, a clear voice came from the side. Hearing the sound, the man immediately came back to his senses. At some point, not far from him, there was a man in green, sitting quietly on a chair. He was dressed in a green robe, and his temperament was as gentle as jade. He had a smile that made people feel like spring breeze at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were extremely deep, as if he could see through everything in the world. Under his gaze, nothing could be hidden. He looked at each other for a second. After the bell, the man immediately looked away, raised his hands with difficulty, and said, Zhengming, accidentally stepped into the Tianji tower. Please don't blame the owner of Tianji. In Zheng Ming's opinion, the only person who can appear silently in the Tianji tower is the owner of the Tianji tower himself. Now that all his cultivation has disappeared, there is only one thought left in his mind, that is, to leave this place and find out the news. At this moment, it doesn't matter anymore. His life is about to be lost. What can he do if he finds out the information about the owner of Tianji? Can he still let himself leave here? Immediately. Zheng Ming said quickly, there are others below. I have important things to do, I will pay a visit to the owner of Tianji tomorrow. After that, he turned around and walked outside. Just when he was only 10 feet away from the threshold of Tianji Tower, Li Yun slowly spoke. You entered the Tianji building, didn't find out any information, and just left like this. If the young master behind you knew about it, I'm afraid your end would not be too good. Li Yun said with a faint smile on his lips. Feng Qingyun said calmly. As soon as he said these words, Zheng Ming's steps that he had already taken suddenly froze in the air. His face was as white as snow, and his whole body was suddenly covered with pain. He was soaked in cold sweat. He was not frightened by the young master behind him. Instead, he was completely stunned by the content of Li Yun's words. How can it be? Zheng Ming was panic-stricken. How could it be possible that what his young master ordered him to reach the ears of Master Tianji so quickly? You know, when the young master ordered him, he was the only one present. How did Master Tianji know this? Is it deduced? It would be too scary if he could even calculate the specific content of the conversation. If he can calculate these, can he calculate other things? I dare to ask the owner of Tianji, how did you know this news? Zheng Ming slowly retracted his steps and asked with an ugly expression. Don't you already have the answer in your heart? Li Yun asked back. Zheng Ming was speechless. After pondering for a long time, he simply risked his life. His purpose of coming was already figured out, so he was still secretive. Does it make sense? After all, this Tianji poster, if he is dissatisfied, he can kill himself at any time. Instead of doing this, it is better to try to complete the young master's instructions. Thinking of this, Zheng Ming became calmer. At least, this Tianji landlord was not as cruel as he imagined. From the outside, he looked like an outsider, calm and gentle. Such a being should not kill himself for no reason. After all, I have not provoked Tianji Tower yet, I am just curious about the owner of Tianji Tower. How many people in the world are not curious about the owner of Tianji Tower? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 524. Senior. Zheng Ming was heartbroken and gave it all. He was about to ask, but was interrupted by Li Yun before he could finish speaking. Do you want to ask Tianjilu if it will go against you? Or are you more curious about my strength? Li Yun said with a half-smile at the corner of his mouth. To this day, even if Li Yun doesn't rely on the system and closes his eyes, he can guess that people outside are all very curious about his strength, because every time he shows it the strength that emerged was surprising. It was reasonable to be curious about the Zheng Ming in front of him. Yes. Zheng Ming nodded stiffly. The moment he admitted it, the temperature in the entire Tianji building suddenly dropped, and a thin layer of ice appeared on the ground, glowing with ice blue luster. Anyone who is in it will feel shuddering. Not to mention, Zheng Ming, who has been stripped of all his cultivation, is now like an ordinary person, standing in the Tianji tower shivering. After persisting for a moment and 3/4. Plop. He couldn't bear it anymore, and fell to his knees all of a sudden, his body shaking like chaff, and said in a trembling voice, "I deserve to die, please forgive me, Senior Master Tianji." At this moment, he got it. My question may have touched the taboo of the owner of Tianji. If I ask him about his strength when I have nothing to do, isn't this asking for death? Now that you know it, what do you want to do? Behind the scenes. Although Li Yun is not afraid of people plotting against him, it is disgusting enough that there are always people plotting against him, just like having flies buzzing in his ears all day long. There are some things that should be known to you, and you can naturally know them. Li Yun sat up, looked down at the other party from a high position, and said lightly, "But there are still some things. You must not have even a trace of curiosity. Understand?" "Yes, yes, I understand." Zheng Ming nodded hurriedly. He was now calm. Just a moment ago, he felt that he was on the edge of life and death. He walked away no less than 10 times, and each time he felt endless despair. God knows, what is happening in front of him. Will this Tianji building master directly press him to death? Even if he dies, he estimates that the forces behind him, without knowing the strength of Tianji building master, will definitely pretend not to know about his death. And ignore. But Li Yun changed the subject. As soon as these two words came out, Zheng Ming clearly felt that a lot of the pressure on his shoulders had disappeared. He immediately relaxed a little, and it seemed that things were turning around. "There are some things that I can tell you. Tianji Tower will not interfere in any world, including the young master behind you who makes some small moves in secret." Li Yun wrote lightly. "The strength in his hands is nothing more than this in my eyes. For a reincarnated person, even if his strength returns to its peak, what will happen?" As soon as these words came out, Zheng Ming couldn't calm down. Does the owner of Tianji already know about this? He is an immortal being. No matter how you look at it, he will not obey the command of an imperial clan young master. After all, the dignity of immortal existence must be possessed. But there is one exception, and that is this person. The future potential is limitless. The young master of the Lu imperial clan is this kind of person. In his last life, he was a giant immortal king. He lived for an extremely long time and was once a giant. After his death, he left behind his subordinates have been looking for his reincarnation. It wasn't until not long ago that some traces were found. But what he didn't expect was that he just came to Tianji Tower, and the mysterious owner of Tianji Tower already knew everything, including my young master's biggest secret. This is a bit embarrassing. What, do you think your young master's actions are flawless? Li Yunfan said lightly. In my opinion, he is just coveting the inheritance of the underworld, and wants to use this to get closer. This. Zheng Ming was stunned. After a long time, he murmured, "Senior Master Tianji is joking." Although he said that, he knew very well whether he was joking or not. In his previous life, his young master had stuck at the last step, unable to break through. Therefore, he had no choice but to reincarnate and rebuild. But what he never expected was that when he was reincarnated and recultivating, he would actually get news of the inheritance from the underworld. As a giant immortal king, he has lived for countless years, and he has witnessed the glory of the underworld with his own eyes. No one knows the horror of the inheritance of the underworld better than him. If he can obtain the inheritance from the underworld, there is no doubt that he has a chance to break through the last step and become a supreme immortal emperor respected by all realms. The lord of the underworld in the Xianguang realm was his first target before. But before he could take action, the Xianguang realm had already disappeared. When he learned the news about the underworld, he was a little confused because the underworld had been destroyed. Senior, was he a person who participated in the battle in the underworld in the past? Zheng Ming asked cautiously. This news is very important. The characters who once participated in the destruction of the underworld have survived to this day. Even if they are small pawns, they are now terrifying. If it is one of the main forces, I am afraid that the strength of this TNG building master will there are still several levels to go up. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 525. Oh. Li Yun showed an expression that seemed to be a smile but not a smile, and said lightly, "Is this question important?" Zheng didn't answer, but nodded quickly. "Since you want to know, I might as well tell you," Li Yun said slowly. As soon as these words came out, Zheng suddenly became energetic. He concentrated, raised his ears, and waited for Li Yun's next words. However, Li Yun did not let him wait any longer and said directly, "2 items of immortality." Zheng seemed to have heard something incredible, his facial expression suddenly froze. Two immortality items. If not? Li Yun asked back. He chuckled and said, "Did you forget where this place is? Any problem has to pay a certain price. No one can get a piece of news in vain in TNG Tower. Not even the immortal emperor." Zheng was speechless. He was frightened by what he just said. Not even the immortal emperor? The implication is that this TNG building master no longer takes the immortal emperor seriously. Regardless of whether the sentence is true or false, he can't find a reason to refute it, because with his little strength, he can't see through Li Yun's depth. "Do you still want to know now?" Li Yun lowered his eyes, looked at Zheng, and asked softly. Zheng expression changed rapidly. He was constantly calculating in his mind that the purpose of his coming was to inquire about the news about TNG Tower. If he went back like this, I'm afraid he would have to go back. The young master left an unfavorable impression in his mind. You must know that the young master is the reincarnation of the immortal king. If he does not fall in the future, he will be a supreme immortal king. If he keeps this thigh, he will be prosperous in just a short time. But this job, once an unfavorable impression is left, not to mention the disappearance of your career, you will be kicked away if you make a mistake. It is not so easy to find such a good partner. The TNG poster in front of you is actually a good partner. But can it be my turn? It is estimated that countless people want to get on the line of TNG Tower. It is almost impossible for me to be looked upon by the owner of TNG Tower. If this is the case, then I know that I am counting on my young master. Thinking of this, Zheng gritted his teeth. He took out 2 jade boxes, in which 2 immortal elixirs were sealed. He placed them in front of Li Yun and said respectfully, "Please also ask the senior TNG poster to clarify the doubts." Easy to say. Li Yun nodded, put away the 2 jade boxes, and faintly uttered a few words. "I was not involved in that battle." Gone. Zheng didn't react for a while. He had received such news in exchange for the 2 elixirs of the immortality realm. Is there any difference between knowing and not knowing? Even if it is, the owner of TNG told himself that he had participated. That battle was easier for me to accept, but it turned out that he didn't participate, which was very uncomfortable. With TNG's strength, he must have become a giant before the endless years. Why didn't he participate? Is he not optimistic about it? If the Wanja side is still not optimistic about the underworld side, what was his attitude at that time? There is no way to speculate on this point. I don't know the attitude of the owner of TNG. In the future, if my young master is planning the inheritance of the underworld, he will be suddenly killed by the owner of TNG. What should I do if they got involved? Zheng face was filled with despair. Now he could see that it was almost impossible to find out the news about TNG Tower. After all, how could the owner of TNG Tower do this? How about telling everyone in the world about his own affairs? Since he can't find out the news about TNG Tower, it seems that he can only change his mind now. Zheng reorganized his thoughts and asked tentatively. Senior suddenly asked about the underworld in the Xianguang realm. How do you view it as it rises and has the momentum to invade all realms? Although the underworld in the Xianguang realm was strong at the beginning, the Jinhui realm was not that afraid. From the mouths of the creatures in the Xianguang realm who fled, they also learned some news about the Xianguang realm, and many of them had already sealed their ancestral lands. There are also some ruthless characters who directly smashed the bones of ancestral graves and spread ashes. In this way, it can be said that the threat of the soul-calling beads is directly reduced to the minimum. Even if some fish slip through the net and come back from the dead, they are still a threat. Not much. If they can figure out the attitude of the owner of Tianji now, it will undoubtedly be of great benefit to them. At the very least, they will not suddenly run into the gun of the owner of Tianji. This problem. Li Yun pondered for a moment and said lightly, an immortal item. This. Hearing these words, Zheng Ming's expression suddenly changed. The question he just asked was wasted on two immortality items. Come again now? Will this question also lead to throwing away an extremely valuable thing for nothing? Anything with the word immortality on it is worth a lot of money. Not even roadside cabbage. Even Zheng Ming himself would not be able to take it out casually. Rest assured. Li Yun saw Zheng Ming's concerns and said softly, this question has been asked before. As long as you have an immortal realm item, you can't suffer any loss. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 526. Has anyone asked? Zheng Ming subconsciously wanted to ask who had asked this question. But the words came to his lips. He took it back. It would be better if he didn't ask. If he did, God knows what the Tianji building master would do. I pondered for a long time. Zheng Ming gritted his teeth, took out an immortal realm item again, placed it in front of Li Yun, and asked, Senior, can you say it now? Can. Li Yun nodded and said, the affairs of the underworld have nothing to do with the Tianji Tower. Naturally, if you want to go against the underworld, the Tianji Tower will not interfere. But talk about this. Li Yun changed the subject. Zheng Ming, who had just started to feel excited, suddenly felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on him, and his heart started to pound again. He looked at Li Yun with curiosity and waited quietly for the next sentence. However, if someone else wants to interfere with it, if anything happens, it has nothing to do with Tianji Tower. Li Yun said without letting Zheng Ming wait too long. The meaning of these words is already very clear. That is, you can fight as you like, Tianji Tower will only watch on the sidelines, but if someone comes to Tianji Tower to buy information, he will not do the same. I will refuse. If you are suddenly crippled by the news from Tianji Tower, when the time comes, don't blame Tianji Tower. If so. Zheng Ming lowered his head, his eyes flashing, and he was making calculations in his heart. It seems that Tianji Tower has no goodwill or malice towards the underworld, and his young master may not have missed the opportunity to inherit the underworld from it. As for whether someone would interfere with it, he had never thought about it. Come again. He has found out a lot of information. The underworld in Xianguang realm has caused public outrage, and many people want to get rid of it quickly. He and others also covet the underworld. At least for now, everyone is on the same front, that is, they all want to kill the Lord of the underworld. More importantly, he was in the dark and everyone else was in the light. Who would have thought that while everyone was fighting with each other, there would be a fisherman standing by, waiting for an opportunity? Dare to ask, seniors. Zheng Ming's heart was burning. He suddenly raised his head, his eyes burning, and asked eagerly, Senior, do you know the whereabouts of the master of the underworld in the Xianguang realm? The underworld in the Xianguang realm was crippled. It is no secret that the lord of the underworld escaped with the few remaining people. The only worrying thing is that the lord of the underworld may break through the immortal king and make a comeback in the near future. So, At this time, I don't know how many people want to find the whereabouts of the Lord of the Underworld and strangle him in the cradle before he can break through. Are you going to take action against the Lord of the Underworld? Quite a bit of courage, Li Yun said with a chuckle. He was not surprised by this matter. Although the forces behind Zhengming did not have an immortal king, it was impossible for their young master not to prepare backup plans before reincarnation. After all, reincarnation risks it's not a small thing. One mistake, he will fall before he can grow up. Now the opponent is holding his biggest trump card to fight against the Lord of the Underworld. It is not impossible to win. After all, he was once an immortal king. He has many methods. For example, restoring the immortal king's combat power in a short time. For a figure like the immortal king, even just one breath is enough to suppress the Lord of the Underworld. Senior, how much is this news worth? Zheng Ming asked hopefully. Not much. Li Yun raised a finger and said calmly, an item at the level of an immortal king. Immortal king. Zheng Ming almost thought he heard wrong. He no longer had anything in the immortality realm. The reason why he dared to ask for information was because there was an immortal king-level young master standing behind him. If he couldn't afford the price, if so, he could also ask the young master to take action. But what he never expected was that the owner of Tianji Hall would actually ask for a price for an immortal king-level item from the beginning. This thing was beyond his authority. Even if it was, it is difficult for my young master to take it out. There was a qualitative difference between being an immortal king once and being an immortal king now. If they take out one thing, they will increase the risk of being overthrown by countless others. After all, immortal king, it is not an exaggeration to say that something of the highest level can suppress the current world. At the very least. It is not an exaggeration to put it in the current Tianyuan world or the Earth immortal world. In these worlds, let alone the immortal realm, there are not many true immortals. Bringing out any immortal king-level weapon or technique is enough to make countless people feel jealous but dare not make any move. Although the treasure is touching, everyone understands that there are some things that they cannot touch. This is the deterrent power of immortal king-level items. But now, the price of Tianji host is so high, Zheng Ming was caught in a dilemma for a while. After thinking for a long time, he said softly, Senior, you are a immortal king level thing, I can't make the decision. Can you let me, the junior, ask the young master for his opinion? Can. Li Yun nodded and said, you tell me, young master, if you miss this village, you won't have this shop. The Lord of the Underworld is not far away from the immortal king realm. The other party may become an immortal king at any time. And you, young master, you have not broken through the realm before and become an immortal emperor. If you miss the inheritance of the underworld now, it is difficult to say whether you can become an immortal emperor in the future. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 527. Zheng Ming was still hesitant at first. Hearing Li Yun's words, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he asked with some disbelief, Senior, what do you mean, if my young master gets the inheritance from the Lord of the Underworld? Is it possible to make further progress? Ah! Li Yun chuckled. How glorious was the underworld in the past. There is an immortal emperor who is in charge and has a complete cultivation system. Not to mention young master Yujia, before reincarnation, he was just an immortal king. Even if he takes a step closer and becomes a quasi-immortal emperor, he will still benefit a lot from the inheritance of the underworld. Of course. Li Yun glanced at Zheng Ming and said slowly, what I just talked about is the complete inheritance of the underworld. You should not think about such things for the time being. Even if you get it, you won't be able to hold on to it. Instead, you will get burned. But one thing I can tell you is that you cannot suffer a loss or be fooled by the news about my TNG tower. An immortal king level item is indeed of extraordinary value, but in any case, the Lord of the Underworld will soon become a genuine immortal king by relying on the inheritance of the Underworld. It can be seen from this that the inheritance in his hands must be of extraordinary value. For others, it is almost more than enough to compare with an immortal king level item. Next to him, Zheng Ming pondered for a moment. He cupped his hands towards Li Yun, then walked outside the TNG tower. After waving his hand to place a restriction, Zheng Ming a jade slip appeared. He quickly sent a message to the young master. Not long after, far away in the Jinwu world, among the Lu clan, a young man opened his eyes while practicing. Oh! A smile flashed across the corner of the man's mouth, and he murmured, "Is there news so soon? Zheng Ming's ability to do things is really good." He took out the jade slip and took a look at the contents. The more he looked at it, the weirder his expression became. Didn't he send him to find out the details of the owner of TNG? What did he mean by being tricked by the owner of TNG into buying information? You opened your mouth and saw an immortal king level item. Do you really think that you are stupid and have too much money, so you take an immortal king level item as cabbage on the roadside and give it away casually? Is it because of the whereabouts of the Lord of the Underworld? A trace of dissatisfaction arose in the young man's heart, but it quickly dissipated. Lord of the Underworld. The young man murmured softly. This person is extremely important to him, but he has already sent people out to look for him. He is not sure whether he can be found, but what if he is found? Then when I was in TNG Tower, didn't I just throw away something of immortal king level in vain? But if you can't find it, the other party will become an immortal king. At that time, it will be difficult to plot the other party's inheritance. After all, his current strength is just that he has just entered the immortal realm, and there is still a long way to go before he is the immortal king. Even if he has some trump cards, he cannot use them at will. The trump card is the trump card precisely because it has countless restrictions. Zheng Ming has posed a difficult problem for me. The young man frowned and murmured. He tapped his fingers on the table, and a jade box appeared in his hand. Lying in it was an ancient book with the 4 characters of Tianluo Daozang written on it. This was from his previous life. By practicing the techniques, one can reach the realm of the immortal king. As of now, this is the only immortal king level item that he can take out without hurting his own vitality. However, his whole life's hard work has been given away in vain. He was somewhat unwilling to do so, because he was not sure whether he could take the final step after defeating the Lord of the Underworld. What if he lost his wife and lost his troops? Just when he was having trouble making a decision, the jade slip that had just been summoned shone brightly again. Get up. It's still news about Zheng Ming. What do you think, young master? The senior master of TNG once said that this is the only opportunity for the young master. If this opportunity is missed, the chance of the young master to make further progress will be slim. Moreover, the Lord of the Underworld is very close to the immortal king realm and may become an immortal king at any time. If he breaks through, I am afraid we are thinking of becoming his enemy, and we may have to pay a huge price. Although the Underworld has been destroyed, the Lord of the Underworld is still alive. As long as he is here, the Underworld is still a transcendent force. Few people dare to provoke it, even if it is their entire Jinwu world combined. Do you want to fight against the Underworld? If you are an enemy of the Lord, you have to weigh it. Not to mention their Lu clan. It seems that I still can't bear to let the child catch the wolf. The man glanced at the skill next to him. This is his life's hard work, but if he really gets the inheritance of the Underworld, it is worth it. After all, the Underworld is the lifelong effort of an immortal emperor. In comparison, I am just an immortal king, but I am still far behind. After thinking about this, I directly passed the content of the technique through the jade slips, and placed a layer of restrictions on it. In this way, it is natural to prevent. As for whether the owner of TNG can see it, it is not something he considers. Come to think of it, it shouldn't be difficult to break the restrictions he left with the methods of the owner of TNG, right? Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 528. Inside the TNG building. Zhengming left and came back. This time, he has an extra jade slip in his hand. Senior, this is what you need. I don't know the whereabouts of the Lord of the Underworld. Easy to say. Li Yun nodded, picked up the jade slip and took a look at it. The restrictions in it were easily erased by him. After reading the content, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Judging from this technique, Zhengming's young master, he still had some strength in his previous life. His skills are indeed unique. If you continue on this path, there is still a glimmer of possibility to become an immortal emperor in the future. Of course, it is just a glimmer. This is the whereabouts of the Lord of the Underworld. Li Yun flipped his palm, and a brand new jade slip appeared, shining with white brilliance, and landed in front of Zhengming. At this moment, the Lord of the Underworld is in the chaos near the Xianguang realm. Li Yun pondered for a moment, then spoke again. Today I am sending you a piece of news. The power in the hands of the Lord of the Underworld is not as weak as you think. Zhengming was a little confused. He glanced at the jade slip just now, and couldn't help but secretly thought of a good trick. The location where the Lord of the Underworld is hiding is not very clever, but the other party has the strength of the peak of the immortality realm, so he deliberately hides it. Next, except for the owner of TNG, it is estimated that no one can find it. At the moment, he has got the opponent's position. In his opinion, the Lord of the Underworld is almost a corpse. After all, the opponent has just been seriously injured by Taishu, and this is over. It didn't take long for him to regain his strength. He and others rushed over and killed the Lord of the Underworld effortlessly. But just when he thought he was sure of it, the words of the master of TNG Tower were like a basin of cold water flowing from his head. It poured down and made him shudder. Senior, what do you mean by this? Zhengming was puzzled. Could it be possible that the Lord of the Underworld had other secret forces? But if there were, why didn't he use them when the Underworld was destroyed? Although the Underworld has been destroyed, some forces still exist. Li Yun said slowly. Senior means that the Lord of the Underworld has helpers? Zheng Ming frowned and said in confusion. At this time, who else would dare to risk being cast aside by the world and go to help the Underworld? Senior, do you know who extended a helping hand to the Underworld? That's another deal. Li Yun smiled and said. Well. Zhengming was speechless. It wasn't until this moment that he suddenly realized that he seemed to have fallen into the trap of Master TNG again. Wasn't the news just now a reminder to him? This is obviously waiting for him to fall into the trap. Curiosity arose in his heart, and if he asked, he would inevitably bleed again. But right now, where else is there anything valuable? News involving the Lord of the Underworld, he could figure it out with his toes, and it must be of great value, but if he asked himself to ask the young master again, he was a little unable to open his mouth. After all, they have paid a huge price. As long as an immortal king does not take action, the Lord of the Underworld will not be able to escape. Zhengming said softly. Li Yun was non-committal. In fact, as Zhengming guessed, there is indeed no immortal king who will take action. Now in these worlds, there is not a single immortal king. How can there be an immortal king to help the Underworld? The reason why he said that just now was because he wanted to gather a handful of wool. Since he couldn't gather it, it didn't hurt him. If there is nothing else, you can leave. Li Yun waved his hand. Yes. I'm resigning. Zeng Ming said with his hands raised. When he arrived outside the Tianji Tower, he let out a sigh of relief. The jade slip appeared in his hand and quickly transmitted the contents inside to the Jinhui realm. Is there any result? In the Lu imperial clan. The young man in white suddenly opened his eyes, and a glimmer of light flashed deep in his eyes that he had not noticed. He had devoted himself to an immortal king-level technique. It is impossible to say that he is not nervous. Once the master of Tianji Tower made a move, he lost his wife and lost his troops. Fortunately, Zheng Ming sent him the news again. He took out the jade slip and took a look at the contents, and couldn't help but secretly said, "Okay." Zheng Ming lived up to expectations and sent back the news. With the whereabouts of the Lord of the Underworld, he could start planning. This time he would definitely get the inheritance of the Underworld. If he could find a direct path to the Immortal Emperor. Even if he has to pay for 10 Immortal King-level items, he is still willing to do so. I only hope that the Lord of the Underworld will not disappoint me. The young man in white murmured. Hung Wu. The young man spoke. Outside his room, a figure appeared quietly. The whole process did not alert anyone in the Lu imperial clan. The subordinates are here. The figure said respectfully. You immediately lead people to surround this place and don't let anyone in or out. Before I arrive, be sure not to disturb the people inside. Remember. The young man said, and a stream of light flew out of his hand and landed in front of the figure. The figure caught the stream of light and said respectfully, I remember this, my subordinate. Great, go for it. The young man waved his hand. Watching the figure go away, he looked in another direction and said softly, now that things have happened, it's time to use some of my trump cards. Otherwise, I'm afraid there will be mistakes. The message Zheng Ming gave him just now made it very clear that the Lord of the Underworld is not alone. He also has extremely subordinates and people with unknown forces who will intervene. If he doesn't make more preparations, he might not be able to do anything. If you know how to draw water from a bamboo basket, you will get nothing. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 529. Outside the realm of Xianguang. In the chaos of nothingness. The Lord of the Underworld sat cross-legged. Some time has passed since the last battle, and his body has recovered. From the surface, his energy and blood are like an oven, and they are at their peak. But in fact, this is just an appearance. His injuries are still serious, and there is probably not much hope for a complete recovery within nearly 1,000 years. Buzz. There was a soft cry. The Lord of the Underworld opened his eyes. The depths of his eyes were extremely deep. There were endless symbols flowing around, like a galaxy, vast and boundless, penetrating through the starry sky for hundreds of millions of miles. Why do I have a bad feeling? The Lord of the Underworld murmured. At their level, every whim will not be for no reason. Something must have happened, and they will be warned in their hearts. Could it be that someone wants to harm me? Could it be the owner of Tianji? This speculation was thrown out of his mind as soon as it appeared. If it were the owner of Tianji, the other party would definitely attack with overwhelming force and would not give him any chance to breathe. In fact, he could not even give birth to an early warning in his heart. It has turned into ashes. But if it is not the owner of Tianji, I am afraid there is someone else who wants to fish in troubled waters. Are some people starting to feel unable to sit still? A trace of murderous intent flashed in the eyes of the Lord of the Underworld, freezing the surrounding chaos and causing the world to tremble, as if it would break apart in the next second. Several subordinates of the underworld around him woke up from their training after seeing this. Seeing the changes around them, they looked at each other, both seeing doubts in each other's eyes. My lord, is there something wrong? A person from the underworld asked. If my guess is correct, Our destination is already known. The Lord of the Underworld looked in the direction of the Xianguang realm. To be precise, his eyes crossed the Xianguang realm and fell on the Sumeru realm and the Jinhui realm. Since the fusion of these two worlds, there has been no movement at all, even not many people cross the border and go to other worlds. This is very wrong. After all, the world has merged. But everyone will have some curiosity, but they turn a blind eye to the world next to them, and they all stand still. No matter how they look at it, it is a bit strange. Opposite. The only explanation is that they have begun to investigate in secret. After learning the situation, everyone felt that the water in the other world was too deep and there was no rash outcome. Of course. What is more likely is that they do not want to start a war right now, because he, the Lord of the Underworld, exists next to him. After all, if they start a war, he will have an opportunity to take advantage of it. After all, the Underworld specializes in controlling the souls of the dead. When the two sides go to war, there will definitely be casualties, and not all of them will die. Has the Underworld been strengthened in disguise? At this moment, anyone with normal brain circuits will not take risks rashly. If it is the former one, it may be okay. They may be taking advantage of the reputation of the master of Tianji and dare not go too far, but if it is the latter one, maybe, then they would be in danger. Because if they want to attack other worlds, the prerequisite is to get rid of themselves, the Lord of the Underworld. Lord, we. A subordinate glanced around with lingering fear and said softly, should we leave here temporarily? Before the war in the underworld left a huge shadow on them. If there was another Teishu who unknowingly touched their vicinity and laid out a killing array, the situation would not be optimistic. If things go wrong, they run the risk of being wiped out. The reason why he was able to escape last time was because the Lord was so powerful that even if he was suppressed, he could still suppress Teishu. But things are different now. The Lord's old wounds have not yet healed, let alone the one who came here is from Teishu. Even for a few people in the immortality realm, it would be difficult for them to resist. After all, in addition to the Lord of the Underworld, several of them also have some injuries. In a head-on confrontation, the chance of defeat is greater. Leave here. The Lord of the Underworld shook his head slightly. He stood up, his figure was majestic, and he had a kind of unyielding coercion. He said lightly, now that things have happened, where can we go? With Master Tianji here, he can calculate our location even if we go to the ends of the earth. If my guess this time is good, it should be the owner of Tianji who pointed out a certain existence and let him know where we will stay. This. After hearing the words of the Lord of the Underworld, everyone present looked ugly. With the owner of Tianji here, they really have no way, unless someone can crush the owner of Tianji in the deduction of Tianji. As long as they confuse the secrets of heaven, they can get away with it. But it's a pity. To this day, they have never seen anyone who can surpass the master of Tianji in deducing Tianji, and they have never heard of anyone who can even compare with the master of Tianji. Can we just sit back and wait for death? Someone said helplessly. No. The Lord of the Underworld shook his head and said coldly, as long as the person who comes is not the master of Tianji, we still have a glimmer of hope. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 530. A Glimmer of Hope. Hearing this sentence, everyone was refreshed. Now that they have almost reached the end of their rope, what chance is there of hope? After all, as long as those who are interested can go to the Tianji Tower, they can not only find out where they will end up. Underworld, we can even know how much strength they currently have. With mental arithmetic and no intention, they will lose more and win less. When the enemy is in the dark and I am in the light, the people on the underworld have similar feelings. They were almost in despair. But at this moment, the Lord of the underworld actually said that he and others still had a glimmer of hope, which was a bit incredible no matter how you looked at it. "Dare I ask, Lord, what is this glimmer of hope for?" someone asked softly. "The inheritance of the underworld is vast and boundless. Although I have only obtained a part of it, it is enough to deal with most of the difficulties in the universe," the Lord of the underworld said softly. He looked up into the void, his deep eyes were as bright as the stars. He slowly raised a hand, and there was a dark symbol shining in the palm of his hand. It was like a small black sundae, blooming thousands of rays of light, piercing the void, stirring the boundless chaos and shaking it. In the dark, there is an indescribable rhythm that spreads into the depths of the void. And at the other end of the distant void, there was an echo. This location is not far from where they are, it is among the several worlds that the Master of TNG has merged with before. In fact, everyone present is familiar with that world. In the Sumeru realm. The Lord of the underworld murmured. "Lord, this is..." The people next to them were confused. Until now, they still didn't know what the glimmer of hope their master meant. In the past, the underworld swept across all realms. Not only were they powerful, but they were also followed by countless ethnic groups. More than 90% of these ethnic groups who followed the underworld have disappeared in the long river of history. But there are exceptions, and there are always some ethnic groups that are dormant, waiting for the underworld to rise again. The Lord of the underworld said indifferently. The message he just conveyed was to order an ethnic group that had surrendered to the underworld in the past to come and help. After endless years, he didn't know at the beginning whether his trump card was still useful, but after a while after trying it, the result was beyond his expectation. One ethnic group responded to his message. And it was in the Sumeru realm. This was an unexpected surprise. In the past, any ethnic group that could submit to the underworld could be randomly selected. Are all giant-level existences. After so many years, the other party may have been seriously injured. But as long as 1/10 of his strength is preserved, his underworld can regain its former glory, or even go further. "Lord, so much time has passed, will those ethnic groups who used to submit to the underworld have different thoughts now than before?" Someone whispered. "Countless years have passed since the underworld back then. It has been updated and iterated many times. No one knows what the descendants of those ethnic groups think. What if they abandon the secret and turn to the light? The Lord is so if you do it, wouldn't you be asking for death? The more important point is that the person surrendered to the previous underworld, not the current underworld. Whether the other party will obey orders is another matter." "No problem." The Lord of the underworld waved his hand, not taking it to heart at all, and said calmly the underworld back then had already planted a slave mark on these ethnic groups. I can't get rid of it for generations. Once the other party has other thoughts, I can wipe them out in an instant. That's good. Hearing these words, countless people breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, they had a hint of expectation. The ethnic group that was able to submit to the underworld in the past would not be too weak no matter how much they thought about it. What would it be like if they appeared again today? Is it possible? Will there be an immortal king? However, when they thought that the other party was hiding in the Sumeru realm, everyone gave up their illusions. There is not much difference between the Sumeru realm and the Xianguang realm. It is impossible for an immortal king to exist. At best, it is they were at the peak of the immortality realm. The other party came over and could at most save their lives. As for counter-attacking other worlds, it was impossible. But even so, it was pretty good. At least, they had a place to stay and were temporarily exempted from the dangers. Without the risk of being remembered by others, after 10,000 years, the Lord will break through and become an immortal king. He can still rule the world again. "Lord, how long will it take for them to arrive?" A subordinate asked. If he had known that the Lord still had this method, why would they have to live outside and live a precarious life? If that ethnic group can survive the destruction of the underworld, they must have this ability. Where he excels, wouldn't it be nice if he waited for others to seek refuge with him? Soon. It's only been a few days. The Lord of the underworld glanced at a few people and said lightly. Just now, the Lord said, I have a bad premonition, why don't we? Someone suggested. He didn't finish what he said, but his meaning was very clear. It's not safe here. It's better to leave here and make plans first, so as not to be caught in one fell swoop. Not urgent. The Lord of the underworld swept his eyes across the void and said, I will stay here, but I want to see who wants to add insult to injury. Fantasy, me. Create a secret building at the beginning. Author, Mavericks Flying. Chapter 531. The Other Side of the Xianguang Realm. A warship burst out of the sky, 100 feet long, like a hill, suspended in mid-air, with divine patterns all over its body and an icy texture. There are several figures sitting in the middle, each one with energy and blood like a dragon, trying to crush the sky. That's it? A deep voice came out. One of the men opened his eyes. He glanced at the chaos outside the Xianguang realm and said lightly, we are already close to the Xianguang realm. Don't move forward, lest you attract the attention of the Lord of the Underworld. This person is none other than Wang Che, who came from the Lu imperial clan. Before the young master was reincarnated, he was already an immortal realm figure. Now that many years have passed, he has reached the peak of the immortal realm. He is far away from the immortal king. The realm is only one step away. It can be said that it is on par with Taishu in the Tianyuan realm. But the closer he gets to the realm of the immortal king, the more he understands the terror of the Lord of the Underworld. He asks himself, even he is not at his peak. The opponent of the Lord of the Underworld. At this moment, the Lord of the Underworld has been severely injured and cannot be his opponent. But if he can't beat him, it's okay to run away. What if, due to his own negligence, he lets the Lord of the Underworld run away? Then his crime would be great. After all, the whereabouts of the Lord of the Underworld was obtained by their young master from the Tianji Tower in exchange for an immortal king-level item. If the Lord of the Underworld ran away, the immortal king-level item would it's a trivial matter. If you want to buy the whereabouts of the Lord of the Underworld from the owner of Tianji, it will be difficult. Because no one knows where the Lord of the Underworld will go next time. What if he goes to someone else world, and found a big backer? Or the other party has become an immortal king? In that case, no one can say for sure whether an immortal king-level item can be settled. Brother Wang, we are currently on the other side of the Xianguang realm. Are we too far away? Beside Wang Che, an old man stroked his beard with one hand and said slowly. Although the Xianguang realm is a world split from the Tianyan realm, it is still vast and boundless. They are too far away from the Lord of the Underworld. What if something happens on the other side? They had no idea what was going on. What if the Lord of the Underworld ran away? Not far. Wang Che shook his head. People at the pinnacle of the immortality realm are not ordinary people. We cannot be too cautious. If the other party's spiritual thoughts unfold, they may be able to cover an entire realm. If the other party sees us, I'm afraid that's when we'll let him run away. Are we just waiting here? The old man frowned. He looked around and said softly, there are just a few of us, aren't we a little short? This time, the young master only asked the three of them to come together. In addition to these two people, there was also a young man. Although the three people are all strong at the moment. But when used to deal with the underworld, the old man still feels a little not enough. The centipede insect is dead but not stiff, isn't it talking about the underworld? Enough. Wang Che glanced at the old man and said calmly, fellow Taoist, you are too worried. The remaining people in the underworld are all of extraordinary strength. Some ordinary subordinates are nothing more than ants even if they are brought here. With or without them, there would be no change in the outcome of the matter. What's more? Having said this, Wang Che's voice became a little more solemn, and he said in a deep voice, you are worried about whether the Lord of the Underworld will leave. In my opinion, it is unlikely. After all, we bought the news from Tianji Tower. If the Lord of the Underworld left casually, wouldn't it mean that the Lord of Tianji Tower had missed the secret? This. The old man wanted to retort, but he couldn't think of words to retort for a while. After all, Wang Che has carried out all the owners of Tianji building, what else can he say? They have already investigated the past of Tianji building, that is, everything, as long as it is said by the owner of Tianji building, it must be correct. He said that wherever the Lord of the Underworld is, there he must be. The whole process will not change in any way because of their actions. How long are we going to wait here? The old man asked again. Wait for the young master to arrive. Wang Che responded. They are just auxiliaries at best. The real trump card is the young master. After all, he was the immortal king in his previous life. He still has a lot of trump cards. If you just take one out, it will not be a problem to crush the Lord of the Underworld. As for us during this period, we want to monitor the Lord of the Underworld to see what preparations he has, and... Speaking of which, Wang Che paused in his words, glanced at the Sumer realm and the Jinhui realm, and said slowly, look, who dares to come to help the Lord of the Underworld at this time, risking the disdain of the world? Oh! Hearing this, the ancestor raised his eyebrows and said in disbelief, the Lord of the Underworld has helpers. I can't be sure, but this news comes from the owner of Tianji, so it shouldn't be wrong. Wang Che said softly. The owner of Tianji. The old man murmured to himself. Since it was the owner of Tianji who spoke, he didn't run away. Behind the Lord of the Underworld, there must be a deeply hidden strength waiting for him. They couldn't help but treat this with caution.